I never imagined that the sound of a crying baby would change my life forever. My name is Amina Bello, and 10 years ago, I was nothing more than a poor housemaid struggling to survive in Lagos, Nigeria. I had no husband, no children, and no family except my aging mother, who spent every day battling illness. Every dollar I earned went toward her medicine, leaving almost nothing for food or rent. Life had taught me to expect disappointment, but nothing could have prepared me for the night that changed everything. Across the city stood the magnificent Adeyemi mansion, home to billionaire businessman Michael Adeyemi. To the world, he was a symbol of success, admired by millions for his wealth and intelligence. But behind those luxurious walls, happiness had vanished. His beloved wife had died while giving birth to their first child, leaving Michael devastated. As he sat outside the hospital room with tears in his eyes, the doctor slowly approached. "I'm sorry," the doctor whispered. "We couldn't save your wife." Michael lowered his head, unable to speak. Then another voice interrupted. "The baby didn't survive either." Those words shattered what little remained of his heart. Michael broke down completely, believing he had lost both his wife and his newborn son in a single night. But what he didn't know was that someone had lied. Standing quietly outside the hospital nursery was Victoria Adeyemi, Michael's powerful and ruthless mother. She believed the child would destroy the family's future because rumors questioned whether the baby was truly Michael's. Without waiting for proof, she made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She secretly handed a large envelope of cash to a corrupt nurse. "Take the baby," she said coldly. "Leave him somewhere. No one will ever find him." The frightened nurse hesitated. "But madam, he's only a few hours old." Victoria's voice turned icy. "Do it." A few hours later, under the cover of darkness, the nurse wrapped the newborn in a thin white blanket and drove across the city. Heavy rain poured from the sky as she stopped beside an old church on the outskirts of Lagos. Her hands trembled as she gently placed the tiny baby near the church gate. "I'm so sorry," she whispered through tears before driving away into the storm. Minutes passed. The baby's desperate cries echoed through the empty streets. That same night, I was walking home after finishing another exhausting shift as a maid. My shoes were soaked, and I was praying that my mother would still be awake when I returned with the little bread I had managed to buy. Then I heard it. A baby crying. At first I thought I was imagining it. But the cries grew louder. I followed the sound until I reached the old church gate. There, lying alone in the rain, was a tiny newborn wrapped in a wet blanket. His little hands were shaking from the cold. His eyes were tightly closed, and around his neck hung a small silver pendant engraved with a single word: Daniel. I gently lifted him into my arms. The moment he stopped crying and held my finger with his tiny hand, I knew my life would never be the same again. Tiny baby wouldn't stop crying. His little body was freezing from the rain, and every second I held him tighter, I realized someone had deliberately abandoned him. I looked around the empty church grounds, hoping a desperate mother would come running back. No one came. I rushed home, shielding the baby beneath my worn-out scarf. When I opened the door, my sick mother, Grace, looked up from her bed in shock. "Amina, whose child is that?" "I don't know, Mama," I whispered, trying to hold back my tears. "I found him outside the church." She slowly reached out and touched the baby's tiny face. "He has a fever." That night, neither of us slept. We wrapped him in our only thick blanket, boiled water to warm his tiny hands, and prayed that God would spare his life. We had barely enough food for ourselves, yet somehow, feeding that little boy became more important than our own hunger. The next morning, I took him to the nearest police station. An officer listened patiently as I explained everything. "Leave the baby with us," he said. "If someone reports him missing, we'll contact the family." I looked down at the tiny child sleeping peacefully in my arms. Something inside me refused to let go. "What happens if nobody comes for him?" I asked. The officer sighed. "He'll probably be sent to an orphanage." Those words broke my heart. I had visited orphanages before, while working for wealthy families. Some children were loved. Many were forgotten. I couldn't bear the thought of this innocent baby growing up believing he had never been wanted. "I'll take care of him," I said quietly. The officer looked surprised. "Do you even have enough money to feed yourself?" I smiled sadly. "No. But somehow, I'll find a way." After completing the paperwork, the officer allowed me to become the child's temporary guardian, while authorities searched for his family. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. No one came. No missing person report. No desperate parents. No phone calls. It was as though the little boy had never existed. One evening, while changing his clothes, I noticed the small silver pendant around his neck. The word engraved on it read, "Daniel." From that day forward, he became Daniel Bello, my son. Life became even harder. I worked 2 jobs during the day and cleaned offices at night. Many evenings I skipped dinner so Daniel could drink milk. When he laughed for the first time, every sacrifice suddenly felt worthwhile. When he took his first steps across our tiny room, my mother cried with happiness. "You didn't give birth to him," she said softly, "but God chose you to be his mother." Meanwhile, across Lagos, billionaire Michael Adeyemi couldn't escape the pain of losing his family. Every year on the anniversary of his wife's death, he visited her grave, carrying white roses. He would kneel silently and whisper, "I'm sorry I couldn't save either of you." He still believed his son had died that terrible night. He had no idea. His little boy was alive, growing up just a few miles away, in the loving arms of the poorest woman he would ever meet. 10 years passed faster than I ever imagined. The tiny baby I had found outside that church had grown into a bright, kind-hearted little boy. Daniel was only 10 years old, but he carried a smile that could light up the darkest room. He never complained about our poverty. He wore secondhand clothes, walked to school every morning, and always kissed my forehead before leaving. To the world, I was only his guardian. But in my heart, I was his mother. One evening, as we shared a simple dinner of rice and beans, Daniel looked at me with curious eyes. "Mom, why don't I look like you?" The spoon slipped from my hand. For years I had prayed this day would never come. I forced a smile. God made every child special. He nodded slowly but didn't seem convinced. A few days later, Daniel returned home carrying a school assignment. "We have to make a family tree. My teacher said everyone should bring baby pictures." He smiled innocently. "Can I see mine?" My heart sank. There were no baby pictures, no birth certificate, no memories before that rainy night outside the church. That evening, after Daniel had fallen asleep, I quietly cried beside my mother's bed. Grace gently held my hand. "You can't hide the truth forever." "I know," I whispered, "but I'm afraid. I'm afraid he'll stop calling me Mom." Grace smiled softly. "A child doesn't love the woman who gave him life. He loves the woman who gave him love." Those words stayed with me. Meanwhile, across the city, Michael Adeyemi had become one of Nigeria's most respected billionaires. His business empire had doubled in size, but success had never healed his broken heart. Every year, he donated millions to orphanages and children's hospitals in memory of the son he believed had died. People praised him as a generous businessman. But every night, he sat alone in the same empty mansion. His father's words echoed in his mind. Money can buy everything except the family you've lost. One Saturday morning, Daniel begged me to take him to a charity event at the city's largest children's park. A famous billionaire was sponsoring free school supplies for hundreds of children. When we arrived, the place was filled with families. Children laughed as balloons floated through the air. Daniel ran toward a reading corner while I stayed nearby. A few minutes later, a football rolled across the grass. Daniel chased after it. Without looking where he was going, he accidentally crashed into a tall man wearing an expensive navy blue suit. The man dropped the gift boxes he was carrying. "I'm so sorry, sir," Daniel quickly apologized. The billionaire looked down at the little boy. For some reason, he couldn't take his eyes off him. There was something strangely familiar about Daniel's face, the shape of his eyes, his smile, even the tiny birthmark near his wrist. Michael felt an emotion he couldn't explain before he could say another word. I turned around. The moment I saw the billionaire standing beside Daniel, a strange feeling rushed through my heart. I had no idea. That fate had just reunited a father with the son he believed had died 10 years earlier. The moment my eyes met the billionaire's, my heart skipped a beat. I quickly ran toward Daniel and gently pulled him behind me. "I'm so sorry, sir," I said politely. "He didn't mean to bump into you." Michael smiled warmly. "It's all right." He looked down at Daniel again, unable to explain why he felt so connected to the little boy. "What's your name, young man?" Daniel smiled confidently. "My name is Daniel Bello." The name hit Michael like a bolt of lightning. Daniel. It was the exact name he and his late wife had chosen for their unborn son years ago. For a moment he stood frozen. "What a wonderful name," he whispered. Daniel grinned. "My mom says it means God is my judge." Michael looked at me. "He's a very polite boy." I smiled proudly. "He has a kind heart." Just then, the event organizer approached Michael. "Sir, the children are waiting for your speech." Michael nodded, but couldn't stop looking back at Daniel as he walked away. Something about that little boy refused to leave his mind. Later that afternoon, Daniel won first prize in a storytelling competition. The audience applauded loudly as he walked onto the stage. Michael personally handed him the trophy. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" he asked with a smile. Daniel looked at me before answering. "I want to become successful, so my mom never has to work again." The entire crowd applauded. Tears filled my eyes. Michael felt his heart tighten. He had met thousands of children, but none had touched him like this. As Daniel accepted the trophy, the sleeve of his shirt slid up slightly. Michael suddenly noticed a small birthmark on the boy's left wrist. His smile disappeared. Years ago, the doctor had told him that his newborn son had been born with a unique crescent-shaped birthmark in that exact place. Michael's breathing became heavy. No, it can't be. That night he couldn't sleep. The image of Daniel's face replayed over and over in his mind. The name, the birthmark, the boy's age. None of it felt like a coincidence. The next morning, Michael walked into his father's study. "Father, I think something impossible has happened." Samuel looked up from his newspaper. "What is it?" Michael took a deep breath. "I met a little boy yesterday, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt like I was looking at my own son." Samuel's expression changed. He slowly stood up. "If your heart is telling you that, then don't ignore it. Find the truth." At that very moment, standing outside the study door, Victoria Adeyemi had heard every single word. Her face turned pale. For 10 years she had buried the secret she believed would never come back. Now, she realized the past was about to expose her biggest sin, and she would do anything to stop the truth from reaching her son. Victoria's hands began to shake. For 10 years she had believed her secret was buried forever. But now, Michael had started asking questions she could no longer answer. The next morning, before Michael could begin his investigation, Victoria secretly visited the retired nurse who had helped her years ago. "I paid you to keep quiet," Victoria said coldly. The old nurse lowered her head. "I've lived with this guilt every single day." Victoria placed an envelope of money on the table. "Forget the past." The nurse slowly pushed the money back. "I can't. My conscience won't let me." That afternoon, Michael visited the hospital where his wife had given birth 10 years earlier. Most records had been archived, but one elderly doctor still remembered that tragic night. He frowned as he looked through the files. Something isn't right. The report says the baby died, but there's no death certificate. Michael felt his heart race. "Are you sure?" The doctor nodded. "I've never seen a missing record like this." Just then, the retired nurse walked into the hospital. She saw Michael and immediately burst into tears. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I've carried this sin for 10 years." Michael stared at her in confusion. "What are you talking about?" The nurse could no longer hide the truth. "Your son never died. Your mother ordered me to abandon him." Michael's world collapsed. For a moment he couldn't breathe. "My son? He's alive?" The nurse nodded through her tears. "I left him outside a church, but God sent an angel to save him. Her name is Amina." Without wasting another second, Michael rushed to Amina's small house. When Daniel opened the door, he smiled. "Mr. Michael." Michael dropped to his knees. Tears streamed down his face as he looked at the boy. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't there for your first step, your first word, your birthdays. I believed you were gone." Daniel looked at me, confused. I gently held his shoulders. "Daniel, this is your father." The little boy stood silently for a few seconds. Then he slowly walked toward Michael. "You never stopped loving me?" Michael shook his head, crying. "Never. I searched for you in my heart every single day." Daniel wrapped his small arms around him. "I already have the best mom in the world. But I think there's room for a dad, too." Michael hugged him tightly, unable to stop crying. He then turned toward me. "Amina, you gave my son the childhood I couldn't. You loved him when the world abandoned him. I can never repay you." A few days later, Victoria publicly confessed everything before her family. With tears in her eyes, she begged both Michael and Daniel for forgiveness, although the pain could never be erased. Forgiveness slowly healed what hatred had destroyed. Michael legally adopted Amina as Daniel's permanent guardian and promised she would always remain part of their family. From that day forward, Daniel had two parents who loved him with all their hearts. One had given him life. The other had given him a reason to live. And everyone learned one unforgettable truth. A mother is not the woman who gives birth. A mother is the woman who never gives up on her child. The end. Sometimes the greatest families aren't built by blood. They're built by love, sacrifice, and forgiveness. Amina proved that being a mother isn't about giving birth. It's about never giving up on a child. And Michael learned that money can buy success, but it can never replace the years lost with the people you love. If this story touched your heart, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes in the power of love and second chances. Tell us in the comments, if you were Daniel, would you forgive Victoria for what she did? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next emotional African drama. Until then, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never underestimate the power of a loving heart.